Welcome to this intensive master course dedicated to the Toccata by Sergei Prokofiev. This piece is a very special one because it was a real game changer in its time with its very aggressive, very rhythmically overwhelming musical language. And it has played a huge role in enriching and redirecting compositional traditions. And Prokofiev was actually criticized a lot for this new style, for this new way of composing by his older colleagues, by musicians, by the distinguished musicians of the older generations. So what's so powerful about this piece is its incredible rhythmical intensity. The ostinato rhythm, the smaller pulsations, have always been one of the most powerful compositional devices in order to convey this incredible amount of energy, this electricity that is going to blow any moment. That's why it's important to avoid any accents except of those ones that were indicated by Prokofiev. And also I would like to mention that in the beginning we have a choice between a safer and more artistic approach to this piece. So the safer way to start this piece would be using the wider trajectory. So when you let your hands go out of the keyboard, playing very shortly and raising your hands and fingers higher. But in this case, most probably it would sound louder, so it might be very difficult to achieve pianissimo. So for the sake of artistic value, we can play very closely to the keys, almost not leaving them. In this case, you have to be very sensitive to the mechanics of piano. And also, nevertheless, it's a bit tricky because if your piano is not wonderfully regulated, there is still a risk that something might not sound precisely. So there is a choice already from the beginning, either to stick to the safer option or for a more interesting one. Then in the bar number 9, we have finally some crescendo. So before that, I would strongly advise you to play it very consistently and paying attention to every 16th note. They are all equal. There is a real democracy here. And for that crescendo, in order to make it more consistent, we might think about starting kind of a new motif from the second beat. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And then 2, 3, 4, 1. So I lead the music from the second beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, to the next strong beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, dum, 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 dum. And then, in order to play those accents, well, the first one I approach just from above, play that with the first finger, and use rotation for that. That's very secure, especially if you don't try to align the finger along the black key, but just cover it, just somehow crisscross like that. And the second I play then with a 2 and 3, like that. And then again 2, 3 for that accent. So, and for that chord, I just spread my fingers, gain some stability in the knuckles, and just play that again with the gravity. It's very important in the beginning, although those accents are very aggressive, very biting, like piranha, but nevertheless going back to the piano immediately. Then in the bar number 15, quite often people add another accent. I would not do that because I think that the consistency of that rhythm in the lower register at that D, and that's the first time when I have those repetitive Ds so low. It's way more interesting than just an accent, especially because we had so many accents right before. And you also can add drops of pedal on each of those accents. And then in the bar number 16, we have pianissimo, and it would be really cool to go all the way back to as soft sound as possible in order to start the next wave from the lowest point. also here, I would try to avoid any unnecessary accents, because quite often it's played like that, so people mark beats. But in this case, we lose the tension of that smaller pulsation, taka, 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 when each note is precious.
Precious.
Then there is a question, should we mark the beginning of the new section or not? I think it might be a nice idea to continue without any subdivisions. And then we start our efficiency tutorial. So for that voice, your fingers should be very precise on the tips, a lot of electricity at the ends of the fingers, but the hand itself and your arm should be very loose, very light. And you have to teach your fingers to release immediately after each note. And for those repetitive notes, we use hand shaking, don't use your fingers solely. And of course, trying to provide the same amount of effort for each note in order to make them very equal, very mechanic. And in the left hand, we have spreading lines, so they go in the opposite direction, so we might mark that. And also we can play with articulation, sometimes marking the first note and sometimes marking the second note in those pairs. And of course, they might be of different length. Actually, I welcome any eccentricity in this piece. I think it should sound really provoking, although very well calculated. So some notes might be shorter, some notes might be closer to tenuto by touch. And that crescendo goes mostly to the left hand. The right hand continues to play in the same dynamics. Then in the bar number 32, we start an ascending line in the right hand. So for that crossed note in the bars number 33 and similar spots, we have to release the wrist right before, going slightly higher, and then just transferring the weight from 4 to 3 very quickly. And trying to play it very lightly, because when you play lightly, you need less time to release your hand and to regroup it. You may use some, elbow movements or wrist movements, like rotation, in order to play that more precisely. And then, of course, using gravity for those chords and releasing the hand very quickly after each chord. And for these pairs in the bar number 35, using one wrist motion for each pair. Down, up, down, up, down, up. So in this way, you might play them just without any tension, just using gravity. And then again, I would play that all non-legato. And then legato. All these crazy leaps, it's better to find a wider trajectory in order to approach these notes from above. Because if you would try to manage that staying low, most probably it won't be as comfortable.